Hey, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Natural Fertility with Dr. Jane. Today, Dr. Elissa and I are going to sit down and talk about secondary infertility. So, if you got pregnant very quickly the first time, but now it feels like your body has forgotten how to do it, this episode is for you. And specifically, we're going to talk about the fourth trimester as a missing link in secondary infertility because women often blame themselves that their body is just failing this second time around. But in many cases, it never fully recovered from the first. So, it's actually a postpartum issue versus a fertility issue. And Elissa is a great person to talk about this because of your specialty and your background in postpartum.
Done a lot of work with women postpartum over the years, and a hill that I will die on 1,000 times is that you can't expect your body to build another baby if it's still in recovery mode. And your fourth trimester is called the fourth trimester because like you've had the baby, but you're still recovering from that pregnancy. So today we're gonna kind of walk you through what that actually looks like, talk about a real life case, and go through a little bit deeper on what that postpartum recovery actually means.
Yeah, and I mean, let's talk about some of the frustration in terms of what women are told when they're struggling with secondary infertility and how they're being brushed off. And then we'll go into, everything that you need to know about it.
Yeah, so a lot of women are coming to us and they're saying that they got pregnant really easy the first time and they don't understand why it's not happening so quickly the second time. They're working with their OBs and they're being told that their labs are normal and they just need to give it a little bit more time. Like you already have a baby, like your body knows how to do it. Just keep trying. But we're seeing all these changes. Like these moms are exhausted. Their hair is thinning and falling out. Their cycles are going crazy and they're just being told that this is what it's like to be a mom. And that's crazy.
And I think it's actually before I diagnose you with secondary infertility, I'm now thinking maybe this is postpartum and you actually didn't give yourself enough time to recover. And so we're going to talk about the recovery time that it actually takes. But there's a lot. Pregnancy is the hardest thing that the female body will ever do. And like you said, to expect it to just be able to do it again because it did it the first time, I see why it happens, but it blindsides you because you assume just because I did it again, I can do it. I did it the first time, I can do it again. And there's a lot that happens during pregnancy, hormonally, in the immune system, nutrient levels in the microbiome that shifts what I think is actually causing some of the symptoms that you were expressing. And they're blamed on that's just what it's like to be a new mom, where in reality, the body actually is showing really big signs of not being fully recovered from this big event.
The piece of the postpartum physiology that's not being resolved, and these women are getting just pushed through and they're being told at the end of 6 weeks that you're free to go and you can do whatever you want to do now and go have another baby, and it's just not realistic. And having the experience of seeing these women go through each step, seeing the preconception, the pregnancy, and the postpartum, and how they're all intertwined puts a big spotlight on like what we're doing now in the front end is also going to help that on the back end. But
Yes.
talking more specifically today about the women that are already presenting with the postpartum, the not being able to conceive for the second time.
Right. And I mean, postpartum is not just this quick reset, it is an active recovery. And I can speak on my own, it depends on highly what the labor was like and what the pregnancy was like to
Mhm.
how long it's going to take to recover postpartum. And this was eye opening to me when I was going through my postpartum experience, but it took me like 18 months to start to feel like myself again. And then at least another like two and a half, a total of 2.5 years I could think about having another child, and I breastfed for about 13 months.
Mhm.
So most women will need at least 6 months after they have stopped breastfeeding to start trying. And I have met some of my patients who think they're infertile, but they're still breastfeeding their firstborn. They're depleted, they're not sleeping, and the reason that they're trying is because they're older, so they're worried about not being able to have another child, which is totally understandable. But when I look at the scenario, I go, you're not infertile, you're just depleted because you're in postpartum, you haven't even stopped breastfeeding. So breastfeeding and being pregnant at the same time is probably one of the most depleting things that can ever happen to a woman, and I'm not sure she actually ever fully recovers. So we can talk a little bit more about the timeline. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
And a lot of times we're also seeing like problems that you had prior to your first pregnancy didn't go away. So, in the case that we're going to look at specifically, like having candida or having some sort of infection or having low B12 or your nutrient levels are off, and then those things aren't being addressed, you're getting pregnant, you're depleting your body even more, then you're breastfeeding, then you're taking care of an infant, and then you're expecting your body to get pregnant again. It's
Yeah.
and every timeline is gonna be a little bit different, right? Like, each body is a little bit different, and that's something that I really try to hone in on with my clients is that your experience is gonna be different than my experience or the next person's or whoever else we've talked to, but you have to give your body time to recover. So, some women need that 12 to 18 months at least after breastfeeding. It's important to allow your body to recover. It's like running a marathon or something that you like train for a really long time, and then you do it, and then
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I'm just done. I'm just gonna go home now. And you're not actually giving your body time and space to recover. And I
Or
think
you're just trying to run another marathon. You're just trying to run
sure,
another
you just
marathon
go
right
and
after
run
you
another
complete
one
the
next
first one.
weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that
Yeah.
women aren't being supported and we're not giving them as a system what they need to be supported, and so that's why this topic is really important to me is because you see it over and over and over again, and if I can speak to it and you give a woman the ability to advocate for herself and to look into these things after first
For
pregnancy
sure.
so she doesn't have to struggle, that's huge.
I know you've had a patient recently who was traumatized by the postpartum experience that she had and was like, here she is 2.5 years later, still probably not recovered because we can say that, yes, give your body time, but what you do with that time really matters. And I know for my labor, for my firstborn, it was so traumatic that it took me a long time, A, to feel like myself, but then to be ready to feel like I can be pregnant again and go through that experience. I did so much work and so much healing. And even then, when I was pregnant and getting ready for labor, all of those emotions and feelings came up because I was worried about reliving the same experience. And I have like a team of people that supports me, and I'm a practitioner myself. Just am such a proponent to making sure that women have the support that they need. And I think it's a crime that after 6 weeks, you're expected to go back to work. Some are expected to go to work after 3 months, which is still such a short period of time because 3 months is what your breast milk production is at its highest. Your sleep deprivation is probably at its highest because now the oxytocin and the prolactin is starting and like all the visitors are starting to wear off and the anxiety and potentially depression and figuring out who you are now with this baby and how much your life has changed. There's so much that happens for a woman to simply say, you're good and you should be able to do that again was just misinformation, really, because most women are feeling quite depleted.
Fatigue, brain fog, like we spoke on before, hair changes, feeling tired all the time, going through these sharp changes. Your nervous system is really, really high, and then your nervous
Yep.
system is really, really low. All of the things that happens within the body, and it's so multifaceted, and there's so many different layers to it. It's the physical, it's the emotional, it's the mental, and it all works together.
Yeah, and if I look kind of the three ways or the three unresolved postpartum blocks, if you will, is depletion is probably number one for me. In most women, the patient that I'm thinking about, she's 44 years old. Her baby was, I think, 18 months when you met, and they were already trying for 6 months, and then she had a miscarriage, which like really broke her. She also had autoimmune disease. And then when we looked at her labs, it's probably one of the most depleted labs that I've seen. And now the question is, well, breast milk is so great for babies because it's so nourishing. And then you're like, is it when the mom is this depleted? And now she's actually stimulating a lot of detox pathways because after a certain time, breastfeeding after 16 months is not that much beneficial because you're stimulating a lot of detox and now you're literally breaking bone down and the calcium stores are really depleted. So I know that's a whole other can of worms, but she was really attached to breastfeeding because she loved it. And obviously the oxytocin and the prolactin, and I think he was healing her own attachment, abandonment issues, which is why she was so attached to the breastfeeding. But we had to make a plan to how is she going to start to wean, because deep down she knew she had to, but it was very difficult for her. And the depletion, though, the calcium, the B vitamins, and she was supplementing vitamin D, but like the protein and amino acids, all of those things were so, so, so depleted. To me, it wasn't a surprise that she had a miscarriage or that she was struggling with secondary infertility. And then if you want to touch on the microbiome differences and the hormone signaling and how much that's different when you are breastfeeding postpartum, how much time it actually takes for the woman to rebalance, depending on how good her gut function is and liver function and all that good stuff.
Well, it all works together and the nutrients has to come from somewhere. So you're giving the nutrients to the baby when you're pregnant through the placenta and then through the breast milk when you're breastfeeding, which is an amazing thing. And, that connection to your baby that you have when you're breastfeeding is like par none. And I understand why that becomes such a thing, but it really does deplete your body. And then like we spoke on before, if you're going into your pregnancy with any sort of microbiome or inflammation imbalances, the pregnancy is not going to fix it. The pregnancy is an inflammatory response. And now you're going into postpartum and your body is almost doubling down trying to work on that. So the hormone levels will change, but they will change based on the timeline too if you're breastfeeding. So if you're continuing to breastfeed past that 12 to 16-month mark, right, your hormones are not going back into that cycle. Some women get their menstrual cycle, some women don't get their menstrual cycle during this period. And a lot of women are surprised, like if they do, but it's not the same, right? And then they can go into later cycles and lighter, shorter periods, or even the other hand, heavier periods. And that's all related to how your body and how your liver is filtering and how your hormones are balancing. And if there's an infection, like the client that I'm thinking of for this is she has Candida and she knew that she had Candida before she went into her first pregnancy. She never cleared it. We tested her. She still has Candida, right? We did a vaginal microbiome infection, ureaplasma, really, really hard infection to get rid of, and amongst other things. But, the microbiome and the inflammation that you're carrying in your body, if you don't give your time to rebuild that, that's going to impact the reproduction as well.
Yep. And I mean, just the shift in during pregnancy in the microbiome is quite significant. And then the shift in the hormone signaling from pregnancy to postpartum is quite significant. I love that you touched on the menstrual cycle. Some women will get their menstrual cycle back within 3 months or even shorter, which sometimes is a dysfunction that we need to look at.
Mhm.
And some women will lose their period and won't get it for 2 years, or their period will really change. I think getting back to some basics and tracking and seeing where the system is at is always going to be our approach as, natural fertility experts. And I was telling Dr. Elissa, is like, we're not just fertility experts. People stay with us through pregnancy and postpartum, because how could you let a patient go after they're 8, 9, 10 weeks pregnant? That is literally just the beginning of that journey. And most women during first trimester need a lot of support because they are sick, they are tired, they have all of these random symptoms popping up that they're not aware of or worried about, because they've been so worried about getting pregnant, and now being pregnant that first trimester is like there's a lot happening. And then second trimester, you're supposed to be in the clear, but the reality, the methylation cycle gets a lot of strain. And so there is a lot of depletion that can happen for the woman. And then third trimester, you're getting ready for labor. And then once the baby is out, you don't just say, okay, good, you're good to go. So in my opinion, it's like, how could you just be a fertility specialist or just a pregnancy specialist, or just all of those things are connected and usually tell a really big story. So then we know what to expect for the next pregnancy, or maybe potentially why that the second pregnancy isn't happening, or third or fourth, just because there's so much that's involved.
Specific case that we're thinking of. So she's 37 years old. Her partner's 43. They have one baby who's 2 years old. Happened very quickly, very easily the first time without any thought to it. They've been trying for over 6 months now to have the second baby, and it just hasn't been happening. And so they came to us, really frustrated, really sad that baby number two wasn't happening as it did before. And then starting to really, really dig into their case, there was things on both sides. And this isn't to like point fingers or say, oh, just because she had the baby, that means that's why it's not happening for the second time. It is still a 50-50 process. There's a lot of really great things that we're doing for her partner as well. A very typical case of I'm doing all of the right things and I've been doing all of the right things for a really long time. Why isn't it happening? And I think unfortunately she had some bad advice even before her first pregnancy on cleaning up her body and more holistic health approaches that just didn't work for her. And
Yep.
so now we're working through all of those things on the back end, which I think is a strong proponent as to why it's not
Yep.
happening second time for her. She had a very hard experience, postpartum depression, baby blues, whatever you want to call it. She had a pretty significant prolapse that got pushed under the rug, unfortunately. And the more time I spent talking to her, the more things just kept coming up.
I think the people just kind of writing out like prolapse is a really big deal, especially for a 35-year-old. Depression is a really big deal. It's not normal. And again, I can speak on that from my personal experience because I remember when I didn't even know I had postpartum depression until I had my second child. And I was like, oh my God, this is what you're supposed to feel like?
Yeah.
Versus like be in tears and overwhelmed and in pain and all of those things. So, yeah, there's always something. And I think it's a cumulative effect. And I mean, I know it's a cumulative effect. And like you said, when we sit down and we do this timeline and we start to just go and look at, and then what happens? So, not even the pregnancy component, because that obviously pregnancy, I find always pushes things to the front instead of creates them. So, if you
Mhm.
have thyroid issues that were just kind of subclinical, and then you get pregnant and now the baby uses your thyroid gland, your thyroid hormone for the first 24 weeks, guess what? If that thyroid is sluggish, it's going to show up as hypothyroidism or even Hashimoto's, depending on if you knew you had autoimmune or not during the pregnancy. If you've had energy deficiency or your liver was really overburdened. So, like one of my clients I'm thinking about, we just like barely did enough work and then she got pregnant and she just didn't expect to get pregnant that quickly. It was one of those, hey, let's just start trying, but we can still work. She was so nauseous and
Mm.
her liver was a big concern. And it's like, well, of course you're going to be nauseous because there's so many more hormones raging through your body now. And that liver is already sluggish. And like she just couldn't eat anything for the first trimester. Well, thank God we took all those vitamins because now at least you had some of those stores. But, the body will tell us the story. Do you want me to share my screen and be ready to look at some of the stuff that we found?
Yeah, absolutely.
We never find normal results.
I know. I said that to you the other day. I was like, why isn't anything ever good?
It's because nobody is really good. And what
Yeah.
frustrates me is when we get people coming from a functional practitioner being like, oh, I ran this to analysis and it was all normal. And I'm like, what? What do you mean it was all normal? So sometimes things don't look like there's a lot off. But when we start to dig in and understand the optimal numbers and look at it through fertility lens, and fertility lens means things need to be optimal because we're getting ready to run a marathon. So when you're
Mhm.
ready to run a marathon, you can't be starting at like a tank that's barely half full. We want to see a tank that's full. And
Mhm.
so that's why we look for optimal for both male and female, because the male is going to, the healthier he is, the healthier his sperm will be, and therefore the healthier the embryo will be in the placenta formation and all of that stuff. But for women, they're getting ready to essentially do this 9 month, almost 10-month carry
Mhm.
and then a postpartum period, which is also very depleting. I can scroll it if you want to talk through what we're finding here and what you're seeing as things that are popping out that are definitely not normal and could be contributing to the secondary infertility.
So, right away, leaky gut. She's that zonulin is really,
Yep.
really high, really, really high, which means the increased permeability inside of the gut. So things are passing back and forth that we don't want to be passing back and forth between the gut lining.
It's just getting into the bloodstream when it shouldn't be, and that is very much usually associated then one of the markers for autoimmune. Now, I don't know if she has autoimmune, but that's something that I think about right away because now you have all and food sensitivities and histamine reactions because now you have all of this larger particles that shouldn't be in the blood, and then the immune system has to create a reaction against it.
Mhm.
So leaky gut is huge.
And something that she struggles with is acne. And so
Right.
a lot of the stuff coming from her gut, and we're having to do a big push to get these things out of her system and get these things cleared up. Candida, she has candida overgrowth. I don't know. I think you scrolled past.
Yeah, I'll keep scrolling when it's
Oh, okay.
showing it over there. This
Okay.
biochemical function, I always like this. This actually shows us a lot more than I think people realize. When I see those branched chain amino acid production, that's quite high. I'm thinking that she's fermenting
Yep.
quite a bit of protein, so she's not digesting and having an aging factors oxidative stress marker, a biochemical marker that they're running based on some of the bacteria and microbiome tests that they do. It's like oxidative stress that's pretty high for someone her age. So
Mhm.
now I'm wondering where's that coming from and, how do we lower it?
We'll see that come up on the methylation for sure.
Right. Yeah, and this LPS production is quite high. So right away I know that's going to the lipopolysaccharides are quite toxic to the system. So there's external toxins and then endotoxins. So endotoxins is like your own bacteria and processes when the body is breaking things down, it's off gassing essentially. So this is someone that's probably has quite a bit of bloating or this is where her acne is coming from, but this is quite high. I want it, it's a 3.9 and 4% is the limit. You want to try to get it as low as we can. Nothing over here, which is good. But then this is pretty big.
Yeah, and this is something that she knew that she was carrying. She had worked this was where I'm saying she's worked with people in the past that have recognized this stuff. Like she's had stool tests before, but it's never been cleared. And I'm like, well, why has this never been cleared for you? Like this is a big and this is an important piece. And and she was just
And
being
by the
given.
time we see it in the gut, it is very systemic.
Yes.
So in the gut, by the time we see candida in the gut, it's very systemic. There's always something else. It's never just the candida. So sometimes it doesn't all show up on the test, but we could see this guy, which is associated with ulcerative colitis, which is why this yellow marker over here was up, that
Mhm.
there is a moderate risk for her developing. It doesn't mean that she has it, but what it means is that she has microbiome bacteria in the gut that is associated. So I have a couple of patients with ulcerative colitis right now, and this in the biophilia one are like through the roof for them. So we can connect disease to microbiome. I know people still don't really understand that concept, but this is when I talk about reversing disease. You change the microbiome and you reverse the risk of developing disease, whether that's colon cancer, ulcerative colitis, metabolic disease, depression, anxiety, literally every single one.
Mhm.
So, like there's quite a bit of work to do in the gut. And
Mhm.
if she's the pseudomonas, those are associated, I believe, with autoimmune. So that's something that I would be screening for her. And I believe that you are, or you have screened it already. And then this.
Clients are always asking, like, "Why are you asking me these questions?" They're like, "Because they're important. Look at your gut. Like, this is what the first 2 years of your life built your gut, and then everything you've done subsequently has continued it. So this is a big step."
Absolutely. And I think let's go into the vaginal microbiome because this is a big deal as well. So this is definitely not unexplained and one of the reasons for infertility, whether it's secondary or not. So the enterococcus, seeing it at 70 plus, that's huge. But ureaplasma is probably this is a big one and tells us
Mhm.
a lot. I don't did you end up testing the partner for the seminal microbiome here or no?
Not yet. We did, the first round of killing, and then we're retesting her vaginal microbiome. We had done this before we had access to the seminal microbiome, so we're seeing if hers is cleared. We actually just, ordered that, so we're gonna see if what we did was enough, and then if not, we're gonna go through and look at both of them because it is important to treat both partners when we find some sort of infection because you're sharing everything.
And one of the reasons that you'll see everything that's low on the beneficial is When you have the quote unquote bad guys hanging around, there's no room for the beneficial guys. So I think about these as like weeds in the garden. There's a lot of parallels in the garden. I know you were talking about a team meeting how you started gardening. I was like, I love it. Because there's so many parallels in the fertility world. I
Yeah.
think the soil is like where you're planting the seed. And so if I look at the soil and it's really hard and it has a lot of weeds, then there's no
Yes.
room to plant something that's going to fruit. You know, we're going to give you beautiful blooming flowers or peppers or whatever it is that you're planting. So we have to do a lot of work on the soil to
Yeah.
make sure that the soil actually allows for what we want to grow there.
Yes, you have to build a safe environment for implantation because the egg is smart and it knows, and ureaplasma is not a safe environment for implantation.
For sure. And lots of, I mean, even the risk of miscarriage is really high
Mhm.
with that level of ureaplasma, if it's even going to happen, or the risk then of the placenta development and the inflammation and the preeclampsia, postpartum,
Yeah.
and the risk for the baby when ureaplasma is high like that. There's multiple things we want to be looking at. And then what is this crazy thing, you know? That's what we were looking at. So quite
Yes.
high and the low bacteria. And then this is the crazy thing that I
Oh, the
was looking at.
methylation. Yes, which we did a deep dive on methylation on the last one. So go back and listen to our methylation podcast and it'll make a lot more sense, but she's just running on storage. Basically, her body's depleted. She's not detoxing as she should be. And this is taking a snapshot of what's happening at the cellular level, which is a precursor to everything else that's happening in the body.
Right. I think if we can take it down to the cell and understand what's happening in every cell and fix that, then you're essentially the life cycle of a red blood cell is at 120 days. So when we say you need 3 to 4 months, this is why.
Mhm.
And when we just say you're only going to time will fix it, well, it depends on what you're doing with that time. So if you are replenishing the gut and getting rid of this infection, it's like time is not going to get rid of the ureaplasma. Time is not going to get rid of the candida. Time will hopefully give the space for the body to rest more, but it's hard to rest when the system is so dysregulated. It's very jarring to have an infection because our immune system has to be on guard. There's something that's not supposed to be there. So what you do with that time, I think very much matters.
Mhm.
And it's postpartum is a lot longer than I think most women realize. And I know, like I said, I can speak from my firsthand experience where I thought after a year I would be good. Like after 6 months, I'm just going to bounce back. Now, my body bounced back from what it looked like in terms of the appearance, but not how I felt and not the function of things that I was used to. What society will tell you, like, oh my God, but you look great. I had no idea. And then there is what you feel inside.
I think postpartum is forever. I think once you
Right.
have a baby, you are reborn, then it is a new body. You're relearning your new body. You're relearning
Yes.
how to use that body with your partner, be comfortable with your partner. And it's what you're doing to take care of yourself in that space to get acquainted with your new body. So it's all the things that we just talked about. It's your nervous system. How is your nervous system regulated? How is your emotional state with your body, with your baby, with your partner, and it all matters. It all is super, super, super important. But I'm gonna die on that hill. Postpartum is forever, and we need to take care of these women because they just did the most miraculous thing that your body can do. And it's what does Dr. Jane always say? It's a natural cycle, right? Pregnancy is a natural thing, and your body should be able to do it. Sometimes we just need to give our body that support. And
For sure.
postpartum is that recovery, and you need to give your body that support.
And I think most people resonate with that, where it's like, yeah, pregnancy is a natural process, but
Mhm.
where the brainwashing is starting to come in is that, yeah, but some people just need IVF. They do,
Why?
but why? But why do they need it? Because if you do need it, you should know why.
Mhm.
And it's not, there's a lot of AI things. I saw a post where it was like an AI, like a robot feeding a baby, like giving a bottle, and people are like, oh my God, that's so good. And then there's the wombs, the artificial wombs that they're basically, and I'm like, that's not the same thing, you guys. We can try to play with that, but that's not the same thing as being pregnant and feeling the connection and building the body. And so pregnancy is a natural process, but when it's not happening, then yes, something is missing. And also we live in a natural world now. Like we live covered in plastic. We don't go outside anymore. We're sitting in front of screens. So we can't expect the body to do what it's designed to do when we're not taking care of it in the way that it was designed to be taken care of. And that's where I think the breakdown is, and obviously why we're here and making these podcasts. But before you jump off the cliff and say like, okay, I have secondary infertility, now I have to jump in. I love that you picked this topic. I do think that it's just this unresolved fourth trimester, postpartum, poor recovery, and the system is just begging and asking for more support versus like you're infertile and sorry, now you need IVF or donor eggs or whatever your OB might have told you.
I agree. I love this topic. And the reason why I chose it is because I was having a conversation with one of my new clients. And I'm like, yeah, over 50% of my clients are trying to have their second baby. And I was like, and I think that it's supposed to, right? Because I really resonate with that. And I think that it's really important. And I love this topic.
Right. Thank you for bringing it up. So, if you are a mom and you're in your 30s or maybe even your 40s and you conceived very easily the first time, but now you're stuck in this, everything looks normal, you just need to do IVF or you just need to keep trying. We just want you to know that there's so much more to the story. And that's exactly what we do every day. We showed you an example of some of the labs we find and how much work there is to be done before we feel comfortable saying you are ready to start trying, because we're not just setting you up to get pregnant. We want to see a healthy pregnancy and we want to see you recover postpartum beautifully, where you actually get to connect with your baby. You get to have, just this wonderful time filled with oxytocin. And as my mentor calls it, you'll just be drunk with hormones instead of depleting when anxious and all of that. If you want us to look at your history through this fourth trimester lens and design a step-by-step process for your fertility and pregnancy and postpartum, go ahead and fill out an application and we'll see if we can help.